Hello and welcome to this video. And on this video, I will be interviewing the guitar legend, the jazz rock fusion legend. In fact, let's just put it simply, the music legend that is DiMEOLA. I need to thank Mohammed Azam, another great guitar player who put me in touch with Al. And I've been trying to track Al down over the last few days. He's out on tour, so I'm very honoured that he's been able to find a slot in his busy schedule to do this interview. Anyway, you don't need me to tell you who Al DiMEOLA is, but I will be telling you more about Al DiMEOLA in the second half of this video, when I will be reviewing his latest album, 24, which has been described as his masterpiece. And I agree. And that is going to be a very interesting discussion, because I think it really not only will explain why this album's so great, but also it will pull together a lot of the elements that make Al DiMEOLA the legend that he is. Anyway, I know you want to see the video. As I said, we've been trying to track him down on tour. He's had to jump in with his mobile phone. The audio's a little bit cranky on this, but it's Al DiMEOLA, so what do you care? And I cannot believe I'm chatting to him on this video. I'm trying to keep it all in here. I'm trying to keep the fact that my tin pot little channel I've got here on YouTube has brought, last week Jean-Luc Ponty, and now Al DiMEOLA. Thank you. Anyway, here's the man himself, Al DiMEOLA.
Hello, viewers. I have an absolute jazz rock fusion guitar legend. I cannot believe that on my channel I have Mr. Al DiMEOLA. Not worthy, Mr. DiMEOLA.
Not worthy. Please. Happy to be here. I'm so happy to be anywhere.
So, where are you?
We're beginning a tour of mainly the West Coast, but we're starting in Boulder, which is, second city to Denver. And so we're in between Denver and Boulder at some rehearsal studio these next few days. Well, it takes us up and down California and then all the way up to Seattle. That is a nice little run. Arizona, Las Vegas, the warm places.
And have you started rehearsals yet?
Last night we all flew in yesterday. I know we had like 2-3 hours last night. So really today's the first full day.
And how did it go?
Very rough, because I'm very clear particular how the drum part should be played. And especially the early music, I know it so well. I know where every fill is, and I know where every kind of twist and turn is in the music. And I take for granted that it's far more complex for drummers than I thought, or unless they did an unbelievable amount of homework. But it's not always the first day really hard. So we'll see how today goes.
Well, I always felt that the your sort of gift to guitar playing, which was that incredible alternate picking, was actually based upon a rhythmical approach, which I felt came somewhat from Latin American music. I always felt you played the guitar almost like a master timbali player, and so the drums are very important for your music, aren't they? There's a certain rhythmical feel that
I should have first.
Really. And did you play the drums when you were young?
Not really. My first love was drums, but I went to a lot of time in Latin clubs when I was a teenager, early to mid teenager, and then I spent all my high school years just constantly tapping rhythms on the desk to keep my foot keeping the 4/4 time. And I don't know what made me, possessed me to constantly do that, other than I thought I carry over back all of those ideas rhythmically to my guitar part. But I think I was just I was really a natural professional. Not too much guitars. I'm glad to work. Probably very easy. Dean must have been on my record anyway.
I always felt the first time I on Romantic Warrior, and I felt that the picking was incredible. But the thing that shocked me about it was your ability to shift certain tuplet patterns, so you could go from 16th note to sextuplets to triplets, and those joins are absolutely accurate. I'd never heard a guitarist, be able to play in that sort of, that really measured way. And so being a drummer, and I was always fascinated with that sort of, that sort of time. It was an incredible thing. The first thing I wanted to ask you was about the Beatles. I know you're a huge Beatles fan. I did a video on my channel where I tried to talk about the importance of the Beatles on the whole jazz rock movement, because so many musicians of your generation and younger seem to that's a very important band. Do you think that's the case, that the sort of the compositional approach with the classic jazz rock fusion artists, especially the composers, had an element of the Beatles in it?
I think a lot of them grew up with the Beatles, but I don't think a lot of them credit the Beatles for the position which they came into when their late teens or whatever. Jazz rock was starting to take hold in the mid-70s. But I never stopped liking the Beatles. I only went to take an evolutionary turn when they went solo. I was never a Wings man or with all, solo-wise. Nowhere near the degree of the role together a band. So when they went solo is when I started, searching and researching and being influenced by other kinds of music, and other forms of music, and then eventually discovered, early Miles, mid Miles, and then falling in love with the Chicken of Rubber first edition, which was more of a Latin jazz type of band. And then it exploded, and then I discovered Larry Coryell and Mahavishnu Neelam. And when shit went electric, it was my dream to play with that band. Chick was my favorite musician because not only as a great improvisationalist and very articulate player, phenomenal technique, but he was also equally a composer, and so I pride the fact that, I started at 19 with a band that was a composition band, even though technique was you had to have a good degree of that in order to execute it. But compositions were on a very high level. Sorry. I let it influence me. I let that influence. I wanted it.
I feel this is something that doesn't get discussed at these incredible musicians, and you are definitely in the top league of these sort of legendary jazz rock musicians, is that the X factor about them was the compositions, and Chick Corea is another incredible composer. I believe you're an incredible composer. I think there's a sense of melody, and that's what I was really getting off at from the Beatles, is that there's a sense of composition, which I don't feel you get so much in today's jazz rock fusion. Incredible players, but they lack the.
Definitely.
Do you agree?
I'm glad you said it, because it's 100%. I mean, it's almost, let's say 100%. It could be 98. But no, I mean, wait, there's another young player that's mind blown, but against what? Against what? How are you going to apply that within a composition? And where is the composition? None of them, and almost none of them really develop that most important side yet. And that doesn't mean they're going to have it, by the way. You have to discover. It's almost like rhythm, like to the degree that Chick had rhythmic sensibilities, and hopefully I picked up on a lot of that, because you discover there's a certain element to the rhythm, and that means like playing against the time, playing the syncopations against the time without time moving. So in other words, your lower half of the body is tapping accordingly. And then part of the body is playing all the syncopations against the time, it cannot influence the lower part of your body. And most guitar players, nearly all, have a problem with that. You see the foot moving, or out of time and everything. So you're just playing syncopations. And, it was just, from the Latins, playing against the paving, but the melodic aspect or inclusion within compositions, that definitely had, connections to the Beatles, because every tune was so beautifully melodic, and there was an aesthetic to that beauty, and was surprised that I did the Beatles for me. I didn't think that. Not even George Martin, who I met 2008 at the BBC, he was shocked that the Beatles had influenced when I was up there. I was like, sure, cool, fitting. Everyone my age that played guitar or any other instrument were influenced by the Beatles, changed the world,
I read an interview with Gary Burton, and he said in the 60s, when the musicians were moving towards fusion, one of the things that was interesting that the Beatles did is that they had chord progressions that weren't your standard 2-5-1 or blues derived or rhythm changes. So although the harmony was relatively simple, there were certain shifts that had never been heard in jazz. And then when you start to hear that composition develop with Gary Burton, Steve Swallow, and Larry Coryell, you can hear that there's a willingness to just go into all sorts of different harmonic avenues. And I've always felt that that's an influence that the Beatles brought to jazz rock, was walking away from the 2-5-1 as a harmonic bass.
Well, you break down any one of those songs, like Bell or Burberry, Eels, or I Am the World, some of this chords that no other rock or roll band at that time were using. I'm not so sure they were, when they were writing them or putting them, but they were definitely ahead of their time. And the music holds up today. I listen to it today, and I'm always blown away.
And me.
Always.
And me. Have you ever heard the story that Paul McCartney says that where they'd learnt their, E, A, and D chords, and then they went down to the local music shop, and there was a jazz guitarist playing in there, and he was playing a B-7, and they were like, "What's that chord?" And he says B-7, so they just went and stuck it in every song. But it's the consideration of that, the consideration of composition, I think, is something that I would like to discuss a little bit more, because these incredible players that are emerging, they need a context in which to play. And of course, I've just realised talking to you that there's a very similar situation with you as my friend Narada Michael Walden, who I've become friends with through the channel. He is one of my favourite drummers, and we've been chatting a lot. I was actually chatting with him this morning, and he had the unenviable task of taking over from Billy Cobham in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, his favourite band. And you had the unenviable task of joining Return to Forever, your favourite band, after Bill Connors, who had really set the world alight with his guitar playing. But you come in, I think it up to another level, and you were like 19. I think Narada was 21. Were you just too young to think about it, or was it a real shock to be in that situation?
Well, luckily, I had early training with jazz when I was 9, 10 years old. It wasn't something I picked, and I would have rather just learned Beatles stuff or venture or whatever the instrumental at that time as well. But I was learning standards, jazz version, chord, scales, but reading in every position. So I was needing ready change whatever the rehearsals, because you really had to be kind of a good reader. Those charts were not 1 or 2 pages long; they were like 11, 12 pages. And I think that partly because of that, partly because I had the tech chops. Boy, were they good in the 20s. Yeah, the hand changes at the time, but
what you play now? It seems to still be prettier. It's the I wouldn't worry about it. I'm just
Well, now it's been since I joined, whatever, that was July 74. That was my first show at Carnegie Hall. And you can imagine I was at Berkeley School of Music only a few days before that. And when he called, he had heard a tape of me playing. And that tape of me was playing, I was playing on a New Year's Eve in New Jersey. At 17 years old, I was playing with the Barry Miles Quartet. Barry's an amazing jazz pianist, jazz duty, I would say.
that must have made it easier to go to Chick after Barry Miles because he was an incredible keyboardist. So.
Barry basically invented, was the first guy that was radical jazz. He's just very, kind of behind the scenes guy, very quiet. Wasn't really looking to start or anything. And so I was really ready for Richard Broadway. Also was that retraining, and yeah. So when I grew up, it was a dream when a chick had heard taping me for with Barry on New Year's Eve in New Jersey in a club. Wow. Was actually my buddy, and he went brother, 7 years old, originally a friend of my sister's, and he was like right out of Woodstock. You can imagine this hippie out of Woodstock, always high, and I was the opposite. I was just a young kid, didn't smoke, didn't do drugs. All I cared about was a guitar. Even a guitar over older girls. It was like that age where you just, your whole world is that. You're living with your parents. You don't have bills to worry about. So this guy, Michael, me and him would just check all the new records that came out. We have listening sessions in his living room. And he'd be smoking pot or whatever and doing this thing. And I didn't mind. I mean, there will be the world not harming me. So on this New Year's Eve involves this little Tad. I almost said, Tad, what's that Tad? He was like, don't worry, you've been a rebel. Just take it, New Year's Eve. Well, this LSD set rule to the most incredible sport. It was beautiful. And I had not played that weird since that night. And that, he made a taper that night. He was an amateur recording engineer. I had one of those 4-track TI players. I made a real. And he made a tape and found chick on the management in New York City. Not only found them, he found them and then he bugged the hell out of them. He wouldn't leave them alone until they heard that tape because he was so convinced that they would be blown away because Will was the second guitarist who didn't play for each other forever. He filled in and Bill Connors. Bill was great with the band. He had a falling out, and then they would get opportunities. So they got Earl to fill in until I found somebody. And when they heard the tape and they called me up. And I only had 2 or 3 days rehearsal on Carnegie Hall was the show.
See, what Earl Clue didn't have was the acid, was it?
No, he was a wonderful acoustic player. He's not at all an electric. So he was standing there with a Les Paul or Marshall, like, oh, this is why I was going to school. My friends and stuff, and there's something like that. Blue. So I mentioned friend Michael went. We saw them with Earl. How strange that was, although I liked it. So, man, I would give anything to play with that band. That's all I said. I'll give anything to play with that. I never said, hey, man, you should take the tape, flying chick. Well, he did it on his own, and the rest is history. It's like it passed me. Well, I just kept running a little. I was definitely deep run.
How did you handle the Scientology? Because I know Chick and Stanley were Scientologists, but I don't believe that you or Lenny were Scientologists. Was that right?
No, we were. was so enamored with chick. It was just, I idolized, it was such an idol for me. And wow, and I wanted to know more about what making him sick. So I started to show a little, curiosity about it. And then he lit up like a Christmas tree. He loved people showing interest towards, this super well cult. And I wound up flying out to LA on Laurel and taking a couple of courses. There's a much longer story to it. I wound up in staying by right the 2 year filming, because they make you go into the past life, or they make you think you're going into the past life. It was a bit of brainwashing that's associated with it, and this good stuff too. But all I was about again at 19 was just going home and practicing those charts. So I tried to get out of it. That was a very difficult one to do. What you write. So I had a little experience with it. I put Neanderthal and really made the worst decision that you could ever look. It's like, hey man, you playing with the Beatles of fusion. You're gonna leave that. Except, I have been able to thank him because he must be, for the last 50 years, 50, he's been sitting around somewhere, probably pissed off at me.
The thing is that you and Chick Corea returned forever, and that music was just made to come together. That your approach on the instrument and the way you feel things rhythmically, and Chick Corea, there's very few musicians that occupy that area in music, but both of you do. So it was a match made in heaven, really. I think it's what these things want to be. I don't think you turned to bread.
I didn't come into it like monster or anything. I mean, I definitely was a baby still. I had some technical ability and I could read, but I was still coming into my own. I hadn't found myself yet. I hadn't really thought I had something special until my second album with Gypsy. And I thought I did pretty good on Romantic Warrior. First, turned to Forever Records. The budgets were only good enough for 2 days. I mean, I had like 1 or 2 takes. We shouldn't have a record client. Never liked really what I played. I loved the music I played, but I really wish I had a little bit more time. Like, 2 days, can you imagine? It was like a beat. Lord, budgeting. 100%.
It's 2 days. Yeah, I always felt it was with Polydor, wasn't it? And those first 2 albums with Polydor, and I also felt the production wasn't quite there. Then you go to Columbia, A Romantic Warrior is just like one of the greatest albums ever made in history.
I fought for that. I was coming from more the rock side of things, and how British bands, particularly, have this wink production. Even though they might take a year or two to make a record. But still, now we're signing to a multi-million-dollar contract with Columbia Records, came Sony, and we went from a $30,000 budget, basically, is wiped out 2 or 3 days on Hollywood, to like $100,000 budget. Let's back more globals. We actually flew to Denver, right where I am now, from New York, and rehearsed in a club for a week. Right near where I am right now. It's not funny. Yeah, we flew out to Denver, and then we went up the mountain, top of the mountain, the Terrible Ranch. We had an amazing studio. Like, everybody's recorded there. The Beach Boys, Billy Joel, all the Chicago records. And we made Romantic Warrior there. And we used Dennis Mackay, British engineer, and we got this much bigger sound, a little bit more production. And that whole record was made in 2 weeks. But shit, that was a lifetime. He really did not like, and was actually upset that we took so long to record. But in actuality, it was like, spent 2 months and made an even better record. Or at least should have made another record for that. But, you know, he was just all over the place. He was a genius. You know, I have compartmentalized, you know, the big stuff. It was also as a businessman, or something else. Well, what? Smart.
I never understood that 1976 Return to Forever have moved over. You're about to conquer the world, to go not just to be a big band in terms of fusion, but to be a major rock band.
We were heading for arenas. And then what he did, and I don't care if I can say it now because he's not around. He goes in, but he wanted all of us, Stanley, Rennie, the management, who were also Scientologists, wonderful people, by the way. Wonderful Scientologists, everyone to vote on having his girlfriend sing in the band. You hear me?
Yeah.
And we all voted no. Everybody said no. Because she had this very angelic falsetto, Jesus Christ superstar voice from Broadway. And she was actually the singer in John McLaughlin's The Penny.
I mean, she's all over Chick Corea's albums after Romantic.
Yeah, but it didn't fit the image of what we were doing. So we all voted no, and said, that's it. I'm handing the contract back. I mean, just an insane, it's about a multi-million-dollar contract. So it was nearly, and by the way, legal issue, kind of ruined the momentum. That's the right word. We had momentum that got sidetracked by some crazy harebrained scheme. Chip the genius, but luckily we all had our own solo contracts, and that's when I kind of been very more because I got to put the guitar in the mix where it belonged, like right in front. You know what I mean? To Return to Forever, I couldn't get the guitar exactly where it should be. You know what I mean?
Well, Al, you were very lucky because around about 79, 1980, Chick Corea made an album for L. Ron Hubbard, and Stanley Clarke got drafted in. And I claimed that it was the worst album ever made in the history of mankind on my channel. I don't know if you've heard it. Oh my God, it's awful. And you would put Stanley Clarke, Chick Corea, what's going on? It's just something.
He's done a lot of projects where what is he thinking? He doesn't realize how powerful we were at that time. Had we made a successor to Romantic Warrior, 1 or 2, even if they was placed 5 or 6, 7 years apart, kid. But 45 years went by, and we never put out another. I mean, we had plans to, but then he was always sidetracked some other trio or some thing with a banjo player or something, just insane amounts, changing direction. Every the blink of an eye, got another idea, another thing, and it's really strange because his devotion of his goal when we were together were to be that big arena act. The problem, and he did push us to grow as musicians. Yes, no, he did. He pushed us to compose, which I thought was insane. I love playing this. He pushed us to go that way. And then once we did it, he had a massive problem with it. He couldn't handle it. We become far more popular, and we were outworn. And our records he doing really well. So he started to get jealous. And his way of dealing with it was the band up.
Well, I've never really thought this, but Romantic Warrior, the compositional credits are really homogenous. It's everybody, isn't it? And what's incredible is all those compositions, and they all have the stamp of the composer on them, but they all fit together. Lenny White said he's funkier, And you've got that Latin American thing and all that type of stuff, and Chicks has got that sort of almost medieval classical compositional approach, but there's similarities as well. And I've never thought that, but it doesn't feel like an album with different composers on it. All hangs. That's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's the first album.
Well, no, he made to Chick's credit, and it's fundamentalized certain things about Chick. He still remains for me a major influence in my life. Player of the highest order. He just made some business moves. Scientology equally did things for Chick, but it really, well, there's no doubt about it. He could never make a decision without looking in the handbook of L. Ron to decide how L. Ron would handle it. And come on now, simple decision after we build a manual. So there was a lot of strangeness to it, but he had no idea it would grow so fast and so big. And then once it happened, it was too much.
Yeah.
Allah.
I'm afraid we weren't able to, hook up again for this interview. I'm hoping to get Al on at another date. But wasn't that something else, and to hear his description of the real reason why Return to Forever called it a day in 1976, I thought that was fascinating. Anyway, let's now move on to the review of his latest album, 24. When Al DiMEOLA emerged in 1974 as part of Return to Forever, he set the guitar world and the jazz rock fusion world on its ear. Al can probably be seen as the first of the real sort of ferocious shredders that laid the groundworks later on for people like Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert, those types of guitar players. On a series of albums that he did in the late 70s, which actually became million sellers. Elegant Gypsy is listed in the 10 biggest selling jazz albums in music history. He basically lays the groundwork for a way of playing guitar that was very, very influential. And it was influential on guitarists who were wanting to show off, exhibit their virtuosity. So I think by the 1980s, with the emergence of punk and the sort of move away from the complexities of jazz rock fusion, Al DiMEOLA was labelled a little bit as a shredder. Now, yes, he is the godfather of shred, without a doubt, but he's so much more than that. As I said to him in the interview, I believe that the ferocious picking actually came from a desire to play the guitar in a certain rhythmical sense. And this rhythmical sense was rooted in a whole bunch of different music forms, Latin American music forms, flamenco, even a little bit of Eastern European music, and if you get right down to it, a tiny smidge of Indian classical music. When he moved into the 80s, he started to play a lot more acoustic stuff, and he released a series of albums that were very critically well received. He moved away from just the sort of gut-wrenching, speedy jazz fusion of albums like Casino and Splendido Hotel to a style which was much more sensitive and in a way romantic, as he pulled in a lot of the influences that I just described. He explored the compositions of Astor Piazzolla, who's a composer in the tango style. And at this point, people start to see Al DiMEOLA in a different way. But us jazz fusion guys, we wanted him to return to electric guitar, which he then did. And if you follow his career through, he is skirted between these two worlds, which are actually linked by a fundamental concept. Now, when we all retreated into COVID, Al started writing this album, which I think he believed would be quite a quiet acoustic guitar album. He's recently been going into Abbey Road recording guitar versions of the Beatles, exploring the melodicism of those. And I think this points to a thing which is really important in Al DiMEOLA's work, and it's very important in a lot of the great jazz fusion legends of the 1970s, whether it be John McLaughlin or Chick Corea or Herbie Hancock or Joe Zawinul or even Wayne Shorter, in that the thing that made them so special wasn't just the virtuosity on their instrument or their improvisational abilities, but was their compositional abilities and their abilities to present a certain way of improvising within composition. I class Al DiMEOLA in the same bracket of composers of people like Chick Corea, Jaco Pastorius, Joe Zawinul. And as his career has developed, he has consolidated this, and his musical approach now is extremely sophisticated. So when COVID emerges, he settles in, he starts to make this acoustic album. And this album has taken 4 years to make. And what starts as something very small and tiny, intimate, has grown into the epic. This is a double album. And if you listen to this album, which is primarily acoustic, but also has electric guitar on, you see the exploration and evolution of these different styles. Now, the thing that permeates all of this is this idea of the romantic. There is a Latin, which is the only way I can describe it, a Latin ambience that runs through the whole thing. And so while I was listening to the album, I wrote romantic into the computer. And of course it says, music that is about love and romance. And I think that aspect it is in Al DiMEOLA's work somewhat. But the thing that became interesting to me was the word Roma. And I started to look at the Romany people. So these were people that left around about 500 AD. They left the continent of India. Now, the Roma, or the Romani, or as we often say nowadays quite offensively, gypsies, which comes from the idea that these people were from Egypt, which wasn't true. The Romani were actually a group of people that in India were called, I think, the Dom. And the Dom were a caste in India of musicians and dancers. When they left India, getting kicked out by the local Raj or whatever it was, they wander into Eastern Europe, and we see that influence. If you go into the Balkans, Eastern European, Romania, any of those countries, their folk music is just dripping with this Romany approach. There is a wedding band run by a guy called Ivo Papazov, and it's the most virtuoso, incredible jazz group you have ever heard, and it seems to be completely futuristic, but also rooted in the ancient past. So I've been fascinated by the music of the Romany. As they move across Europe, they come in, and in Spain you have the gitanas, which is the Spanish gypsies, and flamenco could also be seen as having a foot in that music. Of course, the Spanish then go to South America, and in South America you get the combination of the African percussion that has gone across with the slaves, with this sort of Spanish folk music, which is based upon gypsy music. But what's also interesting is a group of gypsies, Romany, whatever you want to call them. I'm politically incorrect. I'm trying my best here. They also went over with Columbus, and the Romany had a strong influence in the United States of America. And I think there's a place called St. Martin's Parish, if I remember rightly. I didn't know I was going to talk so deeply on this, but there's a place called, I think, St. Martin's Parish, where there was a community of Afro-Romany people. So it's highly arguable, because this was in Louisiana on the doorstep of New Orleans, that we've just uncovered a tiny little other influence on the development of jazz and the improvisational folk styles in the southern United States of America. the Romani move up into the UK. They influence the folk music there, and the Gaelic and Celtic music, especially the sort of drone-based music and a lot of the Scottish folk music, also has this element in. So Al Di Meola's choice to explore these elements isn't just random. The putting together of sort of Latin American, tango, flamenco, and on this album, there's a tabla player on it, and I can see he's almost going back down to the core. Now, this album is incredibly complex. It's Frank Zappa level complex. Al Di Meola's approach to rhythm is incredibly advanced, and he takes syncopation to another level. Harmonically, he's exploring these sort of dark gap scales, the minor second scales coming from the Phrygian or the Phrygian dominant, but also the sort of harmony of jazz. And this stuff's happening at a very intense level. These compositions are incredibly detailed. You feel like you could just take 4 bars out of them and it would be a condensation, is that the word? Or condensation, I don't know. It would be like a big lump of a certain harmonic and rhythmic idea that Al Di Meola is exploring. He's really put his life's work in this. This album is incredibly complex. The romantic aspects, the Latin aspects also make it very approachable as well. So this is a really interesting combination. As the album develops, it explores these acoustic elements. It explores these Latin American flamenco elements, Indian classical elements, and it weaves them together in different proportions, different ways. He introduces the electric guitar. Now, in this exclusively sort of acoustic environment, the electric guitar, he has been able to sit within that really comfortably. I've never really heard the electric guitar used in this way. And he doesn't go away from his usual sort of burning, like almost like heavy metal guitar sound, just overdriven sound, but he's wound that in an interesting way. This album is in 2 parts. The part 1 is exploring these elements, and the tracks are quite epic. They're around about 10 minutes long each. When you go to the second disc, it starts to bring elements in from contemporary music, especially in the drumming. There's a mixture of real drums and programmed drums. And he takes the drum machine, and because his stuff is so interesting from a rhythmical point of view, he is able to dance around these quite static drum rhythms. And the sounds he's chosen sound very, very contemporary. Al Di Meola is a true fusion musician. And I believe what we've got here is a jazz fusion album, which is actually fusing properly with contemporary music styles. I felt that you could almost like clip just a bar out and sample it, drop a vocal on it, and you would have a pop song. It's very accessible in places, but also incredibly detailed and impenetrable. There's a beautiful song with a vocal on there, which with some drum programming is absolutely incredible. And as the album develops, we see the idea of Al Di Meola as the electric guitar hero emerge, but it emerges in a new way. I'd read some of the reviews, and it had said that this album, at certain points goes back to his older style. It doesn't. It actually explores a new way of playing electric jazz fusion with a new set of sounds. Now, I'm not saying here that Al Di Meola has reinvented the wheel or pioneered anything new in that way, but what I do think he has done is he has basically created an epic album that explores his life work. It's a definitive statement of what Al Di Meola has brought to music. And it brings together those 2 elements that I described at the beginning of this review. The idea of the guitar hero, the idea of the guy playing the fast picking and all that type of stuff. And also this delicate romantic composer exploring all these disparate elements. I mean, there's a whole host of, Impressionism, French Impressionist composers like Ravel and Debussy in there. All these elements Al Di Meola has dealt with for the past 50 years in a number of different ways. I believe that this album brings all of those things together. and it brings them together, most surprisingly, in an album that is really set in the here and now. I cannot give this album any more accolades. It's an essential album if you really want to have a demonstration of Al DiMEOLA, the guitarist, acoustic and electric, the composer, and the fuser of music styles. It's just exemplary. Unlike, say, the Beatles albums, which are probably more commercially accessible, but are really exploring a quite narrow aspect of music, which is Al DiMEOLA's interpretations of the Beatles. This has it all in. Anyway, that is my review. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been quite an epic one for me. You know, to be able to do a review of an Al DiMEOLA album anyway, that's been 4 years in the making, is a big deal anyway. But to actually get Mr. DiMEOLA on this has been an absolute honor. So, Al DiMEOLA, if you're watching this, I thank you very much. You were a joy to talk to. When I first talked to you, I felt pretty nervous, but you were such a warm and open person that's, I mean, an absolute hero of mine. You can probably tell. Can you tell? He's a hero of yours, isn't he? Are you watching it? He's a hero of us all, Al DiMEOLA. And he's a handsome bloke on top of that. And he's in his bloody 70s. I think he just turned 70. He looks about 40. God knows what he's taking. I joke, recently Al DiMEOLA had a heart attack on stage. He seemed as healthy as ever. But I am sending him my love, my respect, and my best wishes, and a whole bunch of positive energy, because music is about love and romance are at the core of what we are interested in. And Al DiMEOLA is one of the great exponents of that very thing. That was a pretty good ending, Andy. Pretty good off the cuff as well, pretty good. If you like this video, please like by sticking a like on. If you want to see more stuff, and those people who have subscribed and put the subscription on, pressed and ring the notification bell and done all that, and stuck my subscribers up to, I think, 37,000, that has enabled me to get absolute living legends like Billy Cobham, Narada Michael Walden, Jean-Luc Ponty, and now Al DiMEOLA. So if you want to see, how far am I going to go? I can't go much further than Al DiMEOLA. I can't think of anybody. Who could I get next? Herbie Hancock? Sting? Elton John? You're shouting, Andy. Who would be the ultimate guy to have on the channel now? Look at me now. I think I'm all special, don't I? Who should I have on next? Who could I have on next? I've spoken to so many of my heroes. It's been an incredible thing for me at my time in life. Anyway, I'm supposed to be doing the ending bit. So like and subscribe. If you want to support me doing what I'm doing, there's two ways you can do that. That's through my Patreon. There's a ton of content up there. There's as much content for the free members as there is for the paid members. But the paid members' content is a little bit better, because it is. Or you could drop a donation into my PayPal tip jar. So if you want to reward me for all the chasing of Al DiMEOLA over the weekend and texting him and saying, can you do it now, Al? Can you do it now? And all that time I spent doing that, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a financial reward for all my hard work. What are you saying, Andy? You've bloody been texting Al DiMEOLA. God, if you'd told you when you were like 15 years old that you'd be texting Al DiMEOLA, you'd say, what's a text? You wouldn't know, would you? Anyway, but you can put a donation down in the PayPal tip jar. We have a lot of really exciting stuff happening. Now, I'm going to go and get something before we go, because this is pretty important. This is Narada Michael Walden, the patron saint of my channel. Here he is. He's got this book out. And in this room, I am going to do an exploration into this book and into the drumming styles of Narada Michael Walden. And I was really excited when I got this book, and I opened it up on some of my favourite grooves here. And when I started to look at them, they're much harder than I thought. So I might have to do a bit of work here. But this is an incredible book if you want to understand Narada Michael Walden's drumming, who is possibly he is my favourite drummer, one of the greatest drummers that ever lived. But I want to tell you another thing. if you go into the back, I was sat there reading it last night and I was enjoying it and having a look. And then suddenly I saw my name in it. I'm in the book. I'm in the book. So go and buy this book. I'll stick a link in the thing. I'll be pushing this a lot because Narada Michael Walden has helped me out a lot on this channel. And he's a wonderful human being. Narada, love you. Love to you and your family. So I think we're at the end. Oh, well, what I was going to say is now I'm in this new place. I can do that type of stuff, which is very exciting. So this is a project I have been working on with a number of people to create a community centre where we can focus on creativity. No music courses, no nothing. If someone feels creatively frustrated, you know, they can come down here and we can sit down and have a chat. And I want to attract a number of people to try and create a creative heart in my community. We've set up a charity and it's called the Jellyman's Heritage Arts Charity, and the link's down below. And a little bit of money towards that would help greatly. We're coming up to a heating bill as the winter comes in. I'm sat in here and it's actually a bit nippy. There's no heating in at the moment. Lots of radiators, as you can see, but I haven't actually switched the heating on. I've got to the end of the video. Thank you, DiMEOLA. Thank you, Narada Michael. Thank you, God, for supporting me in the way you have. Thank you, lot. Thank the world. Thank the universe. Thank the trees I'm looking at. And we're done. We'll finish now. Bye-bye.